So I would encourage people to not go with trends and also sometimes to not go with their passion. I'm a big fitness, but I'd probably say it's far away from a fitness concept out there. Um,
Right.
if you have an absentee business model, own an ATM, invest in the stock market so you can set it and forget it. It's not in franchising. The only way in life that you can bet on yourself is a small business owner. And I think, to your point, Giuseppe, I think a great platform that will catapult you to that is franchising, right?
Welcome to the Franchise Freedom Podcast, where you can escape the corporate trap through franchise ownership. Here's your host, Giuseppe Grammatico, the franchise guide.
Welcome to the Franchise Freedom Podcast. I'm your host, Giuseppe Grammatico, your franchise guide, the show where we help corporate executives experience time and financial freedom via franchising. Thanks for joining us today. A very excited show for you today. But before we dive in, wanted to thank you guys for all your feedback. You mentioned you wanted more guests. You had certain topics you wanted to review. So that's how today's show came to fruition. We sat down, said, who can I bring on that knows franchising like the back of their hand, and wanted to welcome today Brandon Johnson. So Brandon, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Giuseppe. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Usually I don't do this, but I want to give your bio. You have a really impressive bio. You've been around the block. Brandon is in franchise development, a franchise development strategist with 16 years of experience across 10 plus industries. He's held operation leadership roles with brands like Subway, Chick-fil-A, the big one I hear about all the time, Maaco, and now helps scale franchise concepts at Floor Coverings International. His dual perspective allows him to guide aspiring owners through smart, informed franchise decisions. Really impressive bio. We've known each other for years. We're good friends, and I really appreciate you coming on because you bring so much different perspective and background. So a lot of great stuff we're going to talk about today. Thanks again for taking the time. You've been around the block. So tell us maybe in a little bit more detail. One of the topics we want to talk about is what makes franchising a strong path to ownership. That's going to be first topic, but I wanted to tie it in based off some of the experience that you had with some of the previous brands as well.
Yeah, Giuseppe, I appreciate it, man. And franchising has been really good to me in my life, right? I've now been in it for about 16 years now. This is the only career and I've ever had, really. Starting off right out of college, I was a business major, studied marketing, played some lacrosse, fell into my backdrop of my basement that converted into a home office here. But very competitive guy. And I got introduced right away to franchising with a little known company called Subway Restaurant. And at Subway, I was a business consultant. So I got to work hand in hand with franchisees, overseeing operations, clients, and helping them grow sales and profit. And I got to tell you, it was the greatest time to get into Subway too, because it was at the height of footlong. I got to see franchisees scaling their business, some that had one location scaling to two, other people that had these large trades where they were developing their 25th and 26th location. So just to see everything firsthand from a small business owner's perspective of how they scale their business, the leadership roles that are involved in that, and also the frontline employees too. So it was definitely, I always tell people I never got an MBA, but it was definitely an MBA within the business industry.
That's interesting. And you look like you're 20 years old. So you must have started at a young age. That's awesome. I think that's the part that's missing, gaining that appreciation of running or being involved in that small business. When I started looking in 2005, Subway was the brand, right? I said, what brand do you want to look at? I said, Subway. They said, why? And I said, well, that's the hottest franchise. I remember my coach, I hired a coach shortly after, and he's like, you mentioned you own a restaurant. You didn't want to be in fast food. And I go, that is true. You mentioned you don't want a lot of employees. I said, that is true. And he's like, maybe we should look elsewhere. He's nothing against brand, but it's not matching your franchise model. And I said, you know what? Didn't even realize that I got so excited about the widget. We talk about the widget, the service, whatever is being offered in that business. And you start to ignore or sometimes start to settle, right? I hate to use that word, but you start to settle. And that's not something you want to be doing, especially with any business. So where does Chick-fil-A fall in? Because that's also another franchise you were affiliated with. I get calls, probably comes up every week. What about a Chick-fil-A? And I know that's very different structure-wise compared to most other. And so what was your role at Chick-fil-A? And what are your thoughts on the setup of the franchise? Because it is very unique.
Yeah, it is a unique business model. The way that kind of guided me towards Chick-fil-A is I was with Subway for about 7 years. Liked my role within that business consultant role, but always wanted for something a little bit more. And I actually did interview for Chick-fil-A corporate for the same type of role as a business consultant. However, I was newly married at the time, and what their requirements were to relocate from my hometown in Baltimore, which I'm sure you can tell from my backdrop, I absolutely love and adore. Newly married, they wanted me to relocate to Atlanta to be on the road pretty much all the time, right? It was Monday through Thursday. You were on the road traveling to see franchisees, or what they call owner operators, and then doing like a home office day on a Friday. And I couldn't really get my wife sold on that, even if the money was good. So what they encouraged me to do was actually reach out to an owner operator. We recently moved to a neighborhood that was a little bit closer to DC. My wife was working in DC at the time, and I just popped in, had a really good conversation with the owner that was there, and we really hit it off. And I left my 7 years of Subway behind to join his business as he was the owner operator. And it was a new role that he formed just for me. So it was an operating partner. So I saw the entire operational of his business as if I owned it, right? So I was his eyes and ears when he wasn't there. You won't believe it, Giuseppe, but I had a staff of about 65 employees, did all the recruiting and staffing. So
For how many locations?
it's one single location, one single location, 65 employees, managers underneath me. And then I did all the recruiting and staffing for the house, back of the house, and it was amazing. It was the most well-oiled machine of a business I had ever seen before. And just in perspective, so 65 employees, the location was around for about 6 years, and they were a $4.2 million business. Same center sales increases after year two. It was incredible.
That's a big footprint for those that want to keep the staff a little bit on the lighter side. So that's quite a bit, but it's good to get that perspective. Different business, different industry. You got Subway, Chick-fil-A, and then getting into Maaco. What did that look like? Because that's a different type of business. Now you're getting into a different, although all brick and mortar, different type of industry.
Yeah, it was totally new to me. It was foreign. It was an automotive body repair shop, and that does automotive painting too. So something I've never had familiarity with other than having a sports car back in high school and like that, where Fast and Furious was all the trends. But I got recruited by them to seek out some options. It was with their parent company called Driven Brand. Timing was right. I wanted to grow and my income, and it made me a really good offer. So what I did at Maaco is I was the same type of role. I was the operations coach that oversaw the Mid-Atlantic, which was your home state of Giuseppe of New Jersey, all the way down to Virginia. So I had 35 looking with the franchisees. Totally different kind of industry though. Now, instead of me working with around high school age children, now I'm around like body shop owners and body repair technicians and things like that. So it really was eye-opening, like changing my lingo, changing the way I dressed, how I talked, but awesome industry nonetheless. The thing I thought there was a little bit more difficult to really earn the franchisees' respect. It took a few months to do that, but after you did that, and they would finally see the value that you brought to them, right? Analyzing profit and loss statements, talking about operational efficiency, compliance standards. And at the end of the day, what our main role was to do was help them grow their business, right? Grow sales, grow profits.
And then now you're with Floor Coverings International. So you've kind of come full circle. Now you're in the home service space, right? Not non-brick and mortar, non-food. So you kind of have some exposure to everything. Tell us a little bit about Floor Coverings and your role with that organization, and then I have some other kind of follow-up questions for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I just got introduced to the whole world of development probably about 6 to 7 years ago, and I absolutely fell in love, right? I know how to talk about what it looks like after owning the franchise. Now I can talk about it, what it looks like during the first initial conversations, right? And I can paint the picture with your kids about that. I got to say, Floor Coverings International has been a wonderful experience. I've been here since January. And the reasons why I found this business model so attractive is that it's an industry that is just prime for adding sophistication to it, huge market just with opportunity. And then the leadership team too. With other organizations that had a lot of turnover at the leadership role, our CEO, Mr. Tom Wood, he's been there for over 20 years. So is my direct report, our Chief Development Officer, Albert Hermans, he's been there for over 15 years. So I like seeing stability within an organization. And that's what I see with Floor Coverings International.
And tell us a little bit. So what are the service offerings at Floor Coverings?
Yeah, we do it all. It's in our name, Floor Coverings International. So we do floors, laminate, carpet, vinyl tile, a little bit of everything there, and even area rugs. If somebody wants to put a rug on top of their hardwood floors, sure, it's nice and suitable for the home. But the unique service offering that we have is that it's not like a brick and mortar location. So Floor Coverings International is a mobile room that comes directly to the customer's house. So for those that are watching, I have these beautiful little squishy toys that are our mobile showroom. It's so awesome. We have all of our samples inside of this vehicle. It's a drivable billboard around town, super fun, great business. And we bring everything to the customer, right? So we make it really easy for the entire experience.
Yeah, I know that's not fun. I've had to order floors and got to some of the big box stores, my first home 20 years ago. And that was fun. Never looked the same when you went home with a different lighting. And I didn't realize there were so many different shades of lighting, which affected the color. Yeah, that was not a fun process. If I had to do it all over again, we would have definitely had an FCI out there, knowing it wasn't even in the franchise business. It was 23, 24 years ago when we bought our first home. Dating myself, but yeah, it's crazy. So we've come full circle, right? Actually, one other question. So you development, and while we're on that topic, you've worked for different roles, different organizations, mostly in franchising. A question I get, someone had asked me the other day, what is an FSO compared to business development with the brand? If you can, the audience, what an FSO is, the differences, that was the question that comes up quite a bit. I like to answer these questions on the show because people, they go back and say, yeah, I've been hearing about this. What do they do versus the other company? So if you could just let us know what an FSO is and where the differences lie.
Yeah, great question, Giuseppe. So I got a lot experience with that because that was my start within the development industry. And SO stands for Franchise Sales Organization. And what they do is they have a portfolio of businesses. It's an outsourced development arm for a company, right? So if they don't have any in-house developer, what they're going to do is partner with an FS to help grow their footprint through franchisees. So for example, they can be in different industries, whether it's automotive, food, brick and mortar, home services. And what they do is they have a direct development director that's representing the brand, talking to clients, working with you, Giuseppe, and other consultants, and taking them through the process of franchise ownership.
In the business development side, what is the major difference from kind of what you're doing now?
Yeah. So what I'd say I'm calling what I'm now is being in-house, right? Working for one solo company as opposed to multiple that I did in the past. I have a lot more perspective on the franchisees after they sign. So I have a full access of all 330 plus franchisees in our system. I see weekly sales reports. I know who's trending up, where there needs to be improvement. So I think you really have your finger on the pulse more with the business, and you get a lot more interact with the whole entire mothership, if you will, the operational side, the marketing side. So if you have a question, it's not like you're trying to figure out, oh, am I supposed to talk to Jim Smith or this guy? You can go right direct to that source because you're all on the same platform.
Gotcha. You've been in different roles in different sides of the business. You know so much about the different industries and been on different sides. What would you say are common mistakes people make when evaluating different franchise opportunities?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think one of the big pitfalls, I'm sure you probably see this all the time, Giuseppe, is trends, right? I mean, back in the day when I joined Subway, it was the hottest brand. We were the #1 in Entrepreneur magazine, probably 10 years, right? And that has changed. They're probably maybe 300, not further down that ranking now. So I would encourage people to not go with trends and also sometimes to not go with their passion. I'm a big fitness, but I'd probably stay as far away from a fitness concept out there. And I'd rather go with something that has better unit level economics, that has strong support from the corporation, the operational staff. And then also it's all about validation. I myself, I can tell you everything you need to know about the business model. However, the rubber really meets the road is when you're talking to the franchisees. They're sharing the perspectives on what it looks like a day in the life and also scalability looks like. What did year 1 look like? What did year 2? And that's as real as it gets right there.
I love that. I'm always curious in every perspective, and we say a lot of the same things just because it's not a one size fits all. All these lists, depending on the list you look at, are great, but what was the criteria to be included in that list? Did you have to sponsor the list? Is it just franchise growth, which is great? You want a system that's growing. How are the franchisees doing? And ultimately, how does this even match what the heck you're even looking to create? If you're looking to run a business semi-passive, if you're looking to create a legacy, if you don't have many sales skills, but you're more of a manager. So there's so many other things. And I'm glad you had mentioned that because there's so much information online. And if you take one thing from this episode is just take a step back and figure out what the ideal franchise look for you without looking at lists or industries or podcasts and all this other stuff, but simply looking at what is the ideal fit for you? Where are you? What's your venue? Are you in a brick-and-mortar location? Are you running it from home? Is it mobile, right? Are you going to the customer versus having to create this box and have everyone come to you? Figuring that out is crucial. And either option works, but it's got to be something that is a good fit for you and it has to be sustainable. Sustainability is key because you may do the first year, but ultimately it's, you know what, having 60 plus employees is wearing on me. Really don't want to be doing this. And eventually it's going to catch up to you. So if you figure out what it looks like ahead of time, and most people don't think that way, they always look for the brand and then try to make it work, but figure out what it looks like and then start to experience what brands are and ask those questions, talk to the franchisees. I think you'll be in a much better spot. And that way you're getting different perspectives and full-time owners, time owners, guys been doing it for a while. I think validation in my 20 years in franchising is where most people, I think, tend to skip. Maybe people do it on their own. They talk to one thing, think that's enough. And the answer is no, you need to talk to multiple franchisees and get their viewpoints. Anything you want to add to that? This is a crucial area. And a question I get all the time is, how do I know I'm even looking at the right brands? It starts with your franchise model, your feed, and then it's the brand, then it's the franchisees. But you do need that general starting point.
So I will say one thing I'm sure we all come up about because I get asked this question all the time. Is this a absentee model, right? It's fully absentee, semi-absentee, whatever terminology you want to use. I will come out and say this. There's no business out there that is fully absentee. Okay. If you want to have an absentee business model, own an ATM, invest in the stock market so you can set it and forget it. It's not in franchising. And the reason I say that is I was part of Chick-fil-A. I've seen McDonald's business models too. And I always encourage the candidates I'm working with, any type of those big, large businesses, Chick-fil-A, for example, this was a $4.2 million business. And my owner was in the business every single day, right? Even if he was checking in to see what the schedule was looking like, money coming in, money going out, they'd still have their finger on their pulse. They're still watching their cameras and their monitor, because at the end of the day, it's their business and it's tied to their livelihood. So that's one thing I think that's really key. Another thing I'll say is people that have had pitfalls in their business. Anytime I see people that go out early on, like they're in the business for about 1 to 2 years and they can't make it to year 3, it's pretty much because they can't follow the business. Right? Things all about systems and processes. Do not try to recreate the wheel. When you do, that's when things go wrong. And I've seen it happen firsthand multiple times. That's what the role is of a franchise, is to prevent you from doing that. Don't try to recreate the wheel.
That's what you're buying. You're buying the proven system. And it's not saying, correct me if I'm wrong here, it's not saying you're not recreating the model, but if you have some inputs, right? Like I believe the $5 footlong was created by Filet of Fish. I think it was also an idea of McDonald's. You're okay providing inputs, but the intention is not to change the menu. The menu works. They don't need for you to change. You can provide insight and that kind of, and maybe that change actually hits the menu, but you want that proven system. That's what you're paying for, that advantage, that a business in a box, so that you can go out there and grow the business, start making some money. But to your point, yeah, I see that a lot. I think we should do business a different way, or I think I should use different vendors. We know what works and we have proven vendors. Sometimes the marketing takes a little bit longer to get up and running, but at least try it out, give it a shot. Don't give it a week or two and then decide it doesn't work. I see that all the time. And when people say, what franchisees fail? They run out of money. They didn't have the capital, as discussed, the living expense, and they don't follow the system. And people come back and say, well, that's too simple. And I go, as simple as that sounds, that is literally the number 1 and 2 reason for franchisee failure. And I see it also.
So here's something to add to that. My role within the first 10 years of business was coaching franchisees. So if I ever had a franchisee come and I'm evaluating their P&Ls together, they're telling me like, hey, I can't make money in this business. I can't make money whatsoever. Following the model, following this, like, where's all my profit going? And then you see the bigger picture, where you see there's a new vehicle that's parked outside. You hear about the elaborate vacations they're going on, the new jets, the boats, the things like that. It's great to have all those things, but you just got to make sure that you are sound and established before you bring all those luxuries. I'm not saying that live your life, but at the same time, just know the first few years in business, it's rough, brutal. I was kind of a newborn baby. I've got some first experience of that. My kids are a little bit older now. It's those first few years, you're still kind of figuring the lay of the land. And I will say in franchising, year 1, year 2, that's when you're really growing the business. You hit your stride and everything makes sense. People are in place. That's when everything, as one of my mentors says, it's kind of playing jazz. That's when everything.
Love that. I think you're going to have to co-host a show with me. We're saying a lot of this stuff. I call year 1 the builder year. Regardless if you make money or not, reinvest it. You make some profits, you're going to reinvest. The business is going to grow exponentially. Get the foundation, find the staff. Your first hire may not be the right hire. You may have to replace that person. There's a learning curve, especially if you've never owned the business. But I've seen that time and time again, where they don't know why they can't make money. There are successful franchisees in the system. Go back. Have you communicated that to the franchisor? No, I haven't yet. That's the first thing you have done. Franchisor is there to support you, and they may be able to single out exactly what the major issue is. And to your point, if you're pulling, this is your business, you're allowed to pay yourself. But if you're pulling that money out after a couple months of opening up the business, there's an opportunity cost. And an opportunity cost is taking money for the new car, but are you taking away from marketing? And there's going to be this marketing spend, right? It's maybe not an exact number, maybe it's a range, but you need to be spending that money continuously in order to generate new leads and talk to new families and get appointments on there. And I see that time and time again, where people are actually trying to pay themselves and it's the marketing is suffering, or maybe another employee is needed or another technician that you weren't able to hire. Get all your finances figured out. The business will grow eventually, right? It's gonna definitely take some time. With franchising, you talk about in the book, it's an unfair advantage. You get up and running relative. You can buy a home service franchise, go to training, be up and running in 2 to 3 months, actually potentially generating revenue. And that's the unfair advantage of the franchise itself. But this idea of I'm going to have financial freedom, better yet, time freedom, that's not an immediate thing. Let's launch the business that's up and running a year or two. Now you can start taking a step back. It's not this immediate, I buy a franchise and I have time freedom. No, you have the complete opposite. You're working a hell of a lot more hours than maybe the past, but you're building something for yourself. There's this enterprise value. There's this resale value in the business that takes time to start to build. I'm 20 years in and I said I'm unemployable. I cannot work for anyone else. I just love having control. And there's days that are good, days that are bad, but ultimately it's you start to build this financial and time freedom and this buffer that you decide what you want to do first, and then work comes second. And that's what I love about the American dream. Hey guys, thanks for listening. I hope you're enjoying the show. As a thank you for being a valued listener, wanted to offer you a free copy of my book, Franchise Freedom. This book was written back in 2020, and it's my exact blueprint in helping you find that perfect franchise. I wrote it based off my experiences and wanted to pass that along to you. Want to chat today? You can book a call directly on our website, top right side of that screen, and you can schedule a 20-minute call. We'll dive into if a franchise is a good fit, help you get qualified, and figure out what that perfect franchise match may be. So I hope you take me up on my offer. Once again, Franchise Freedom. Download the book today for free or book a call with me directly, and we'll help you bypass all that information you find online. Most importantly, figuring out if a franchise is the right fit and then figuring out what that perfect franchise looks like. So thanks again for listening to the show, and back to the show.
Absolutely. Yeah. And just to add to your point there, I think it's all about the vision, right? What's the vision for being in business for yourself? What are you trying to do? Are you trying to free yourself of the golden handcuffs of corporate America? Are you trying to build wealth for the next generation? What's your goal? And that's what I go through with my candidates on the first call to really figure out what's that fire inside that's burning in them. To your point too, I think year 1 and 2 are the most grinding years. But then as you start to scale the business, as you have more familiarity around everything, you're not going to have the same type of problems and issues in year 3 and 4 that you did at the beginning, right? You should have that figured out at that point. The other thing I like about franchising too, Giuseppe, is it's not just you in business. It's a term, you're in business for yourself and not by yourself. You only have the support from the franchisor, but you also have your fellow franchisees. And if it's a good organization, you should be able to pick up the phone and call your neighboring or even call somebody across the country just saying, hey, I'm dealing with this issue. I'm 2 years in. Have you ever seen this before? And that's where you get that fast support that says, of course I did. Here, this is how I overcame that. I'm going to share that knowledge with you. You don't get that it's being a mom and pop business.
You do not. Yeah, because everyone is, it's a competitor, right? It's another bagel shop. They're going to be competition, or flooring or painting or whatever the business is. You have protected territory. So yeah, it's in everyone's best interest to help each other out. So I love that. On that topic, diving a little bit deeper, what advice would you give to someone? So we kind of talked about some of the aspects, but properly validating a franchise. We talk bits and pieces of it, but what's the best advice would you give to someone that's saying, okay, how do I know if this franchise is for me? What are some key kind of things to really consider before moving forward in a franchise?
Yeah. So whenever I'm working with clients, I highly encourage them, hey, talk to as many franchisees as you can. There's one way. So you can either open up the back of the item 23 or the FDD and kind of smile and dial all the franchisees in the system, or you can be very strategic about it, right? And what I would do is people talk within the industry, right? If you want to, I myself can't make any type of earnings claims or kind of point you into the top performers or lowest performers or anything like that. But if you're on the phone with those franchisees, ask them, be like, hey, who's the top dog in the industry? I'd love to speak to them. But I wouldn't say just that's a good target to aim to number one and speaking to that number one franchisee, but talk to other people. Individuals that have been in the business for 1 year, some that are 2 or 3 years in, because they're probably a little bit more established at that. But also talking to other individuals that are at a similar point of you where you're at in your life, right? For me, for example, I've got 2 young kids. I would want to talk to somebody that has 2 kids to see how they manage that work-life balance, because I'm still going to little league games and things like that. How does that fit into my schedule? Or if somebody that is retired is themselves, hey, do I still have the time and energy at this age? Talking to someone that's a little bit like that. And a good development director would be able to connect you with those individuals because they should have their finger on the pulse of all the franchisees.
Agreed. Yeah, no, I like that. And that's where the franchise information is bundled up on those first couple calls. You get the franchise disclosure document, but I think the magic happens where it starts to click is on those validation calls. And I'm not saying one step is more important than the other, because at the end of the day, you're going to go to a discovery day, either in person or virtually, and get to speak with the founders and the C-suite and meet other potential franchise owners. You may hear questions that you didn't think of, or they may, and vice versa. But you really get to, I always meet the captain steering the ship. If the captain doesn't have a path to where this business needs to be or where it's going in the next 5 or 10 years, that's a red flag. The person steering the ship has to have an idea. And it may not just be adding revenue streams every year, maybe just steady Eddie. We're going to keep things as is, but we're going to double on national accounts. We're going to work on our marketings or work on our close ratios. There needs to be some type of improvement. I always call it, you want to improve the, you want to help the franchisees become more profitable, more efficient, utilize AI where they can, call agents. You hear about that all the time, and utilize all those different tools and really making the franchisee much more efficient. That's also going to be equally, in my opinion, equally as important, because these agreements are on average 10 years. There's some are less, some are more, but the average is about 10 years. So you want to make sure in this partnership with the franchisor, fit is there and you know where the ship is going. Very important. Changing things up a little bit. Any thoughts, if you're open to this question, kind of trends between service and brick and mortar concepts? Just that you're in service, you've been in brick and mortar, trends, things to consider when looking at those two different venues.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny you mention that because whenever I'm with friends, whether it's on the golf course or just having a few drinks, they're always asking me questions about franchising and small business ownership. They're very curious, right?
Mhm.
And they always ask me, what do you think, Brandon? What's going to be like the good thing that I should get into? And I always put it back at them, what fits into your lifestyle. The one thing I'll say is I'm a huge advocate right now of home service, not just because I'm employed by a home service provider, but what I like is the ramp up time period, right? Get into the business, to your point, Giuseppe, and seeing cash flow very quickly on, as opposed to a brick and mortar location that I have seen in all different concepts where there's the build out process. There's the approvals that you need from the local county governance. If you're a liquor license, you got to make sure that gets approved. That can really delay the upstart to you start seeing cash. If I get a franchise agreement today and I've got like 8 to 12 month build out, not seeing anything until 2027. That's just too far away from me if I've got goals. And then what are you going to do between that time and now, right? If you're not just going to put in your 2 weeks notice with your employer or anything like that. I like systematic home service businesses that are sold to get up and running. They don't take a ton of money because usually brick and mortar is going to be a little bit more expensive because you're also going to have a lot more. You got monthly rent, right? And that can range depending on if you're doing class A, class B, real estate, class C, you name it. Picking that location, and that location can either be your downfall or it could send you to the moon. You never really know. But to answer your point, Giuseppe, your question, I think home service is just fantastic right now.
What would you say is average time to get open in a home service business versus just because you've seen it directly with certain brands, the time frame to get up and running with a brick and mortar? What would you say those time frames are?
So roughly? I would say home service, a good home service should get you out to training, operational training, to really get your lay of the land and get your sea legs under you. That should be around like 3 to 4 months after signing your franchise agreement. A good concept should do that. Brick and mortar, it could be a little bit longer, right? I've seen 12 months. And that doesn't mean you don't go out to your operational training and have your own classes and things like that, but it's going to be longer. And I've seen it with every brand I've touched before.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I'm in New Jersey, just getting permits for things. It just seems to take forever. I feel like either there's shortages or no one's in a rush. I'm not making any claims there, but things tend to take forever. I feel like anytime a new brick and mortar location opens, check and see how long the other franchisees took to get up and running. I know we didn't talk about this, but just out of curiosity, if you're comfortable answering this question. So when you're looking at a brick and mortar business, obviously we talked about the differences, time to get open. It's obviously going to be a higher cost, but there is a difference in how that business is managed. In that when I look at a brick and mortar business, everyone kind of is showing up to one location versus a flooring business, a home service business. There's almost like this, one of the roles is logistics or almost like project management, because you got installers going this way, sales is going that way. You're going to a networking event. Everyone's going in different directions. So would you say it requires a different skill set, almost like a project management, logistics type of skill set? I wanted to get your thoughts.
Yeah, good question. I would say somebody that's really good at multitasking, right? And will be okay not being the SME, the subject matter expert with everything in the business, right? You've got to put your trust into somebody that's going to be handling the sales side of the business. You're not supposed to be the number one salesperson, right? You're supposed to hire salespeople that are skilled and do the sales side of the business. So you're not supposed to be the best at installing, right? I always encourage people on the first call, in the flooring business, you're not going to be the one swinging the hammer and installing floors. That's the least of what your skill set's going to be, right? I would say more so being that networker within the community, right? I've heard it said before, being the mayor of the town. I love that terminology. I think super smart and efficient, going out to BNI groups, business networking, incorporated groups to network with realtors, with contractors, with restoration, you name it. So depending on what that niche is in that industry, it's like operating in the same circles, because when they do see that vehicle around town, it's a drivable billboard. When they see that, that's what they're resonating.
Love that. No, that makes a lot of sense. To wrap up the show, any other advice you would give? So majority of the audience, we've polled the audience over the years, and it changes slightly, but it's a lot of corporate executives. People look to make the switch to either owning a business, right? Franchising is obviously in the mix, given the main topic of the show. But a lot of the audience it's the first time they've never owned the business. So what I hear quite a bit is we have a few Airbnbs, but I don't own a formal business. What other advice you would give to them for those people looking to make that leap? Because I hear all the time, yes, I've been watching your show for 2 years and finally decided to give you a ring and learn more. So what advice would you give to those people that are on the fence and maybe not sure where to start?
Yeah. No, great question, Giuseppe. What I'd say for people that are worried is what else would you be doing? And I think there's no better time to bet on yourself. I've seen it happen where people have those golden handcuffs where they just feel reluctant. It says, I like my salary. I like my 401k.
Yeah.
But I've seen it before with close personal friends that come to me where it's, hey, laid off. Oh, why did that happen? Oh, private equity acquire the company or budget cuts. There's always going to be these terminologies. The only way in life that you can bet on yourself is a small business owner. And I think to your point, Giuseppe, I think a great platform that will catapult you to that is franchising, right? And there's so many different options out there. If you want to follow your passion, you want to be a Pilates franchise owner, do it. If that's something that you feel passionate about, I think it's perfect. But again, you don't have to have passion within that industry. I think the industry needs to have probably one of three things, right? It needs to make money. I think that's very important. I think it needs to fit into your lifestyle and also fits into the financial requirement you feel comfortable spending, because there's different avenues too, that plenty of avenues out there that you can fund this business based off you can even use your 401k. I'm sure you probably to your listeners about a Rob's loan where you can access 401 to start a business. So never think it's too late. Now here I am 40 and I'm always figuring out, when am I going to start my first business too? So it's never too late for anybody. My wife always joked, I think it was Julia Childs started her cooking business. I think it's when she was 50 or 60. But I do Giuseppe, but it's never too late to start. Tomorrow's always a brighter day. And that's what I would say.
No, I love that. And get out there. I say level the playing field, get educated, watch who you take advice from people that have never been in franchising, never owned the business, talking to your uncle or aunt or whoever the family member is at Thanksgiving and they've never owned the business. Just be careful. I had made some of those mistakes over the years with friends and things like that. And I'm like, wait a second, this guy never even owned the business. So it wasn't their fault. They were just giving their perspective. But yeah, I think you should get educated. If you're looking at business ownership and there's a franchise around the corner, even if it's as you're not interested in, speak with them, pick their brain. I don't know, buy them lunch. You'll learn so much more in that conversation than you will searching online. So I think the opportunity is there for those that want to be themselves and figure out their next path and build something. But I'm old school. Get my pad and pencil and paper, write it down. What does this ideal business look like? What's working? What's not working in your current situation? You don't need help with that. You can figure that out yourself and then work with a coach, speak with a franchise brand, see if it all fits together. Because in many cases, to your point, it doesn't have to be something you're passionate in. I don't know a lot of people that are passionate about flooring or painting or a lot of these other brands, but the argument I always make is that these are the vehicles that will allow you to do the things you enjoy. And that's the time freedom we talked about, right? It's going, for me, the soccer game, World Cup going on right now, allowing me to take off next week in the middle of the day to see the Ivory Coast game in Philly, just random, and took off half a day to go see that game. So those are the things. And maybe it's not directly related in the business, but it's creating that time freedom so you can go out and do the things, check out the new restaurant, go to the soccer game or whatever you enjoy doing, the travels. Definitely take a step back, figure out what you want this business to look like. And there's definitely a business out there. If you have the time and you do the due diligence, we'll be able to fix it.
One more thing. I always love this quotes. I always save them by phone and everything.
Yeah.
But one that I've seen a lot lately, it's pretty cool. It's do what others won't, so live like others don't. So it's just lighting the fire up under you. To just when you're seeing that sports car drive past you or seeing that couple kind of buzzing by on their speedboat or anything, what do you think they do for a living? Or seeing that house around the block. It's funny. A really good book too, if you ever want to read it. It's called The Millionaire Next Door. I'm sure you've read this before. This is fantastic, right? It's where they've surveyed a bunch of individuals too. You probably figure that it's doctors and lawyers that live in the gated communities. It's not always the case, right? Times it's the home service business owners, it's the plumbers, it's the roofers. And if you look around in your general neighborhood, I'm sure you're going to see them at the country clubs too, because it's a business that is a need, not a want. And it's a great industry to be in.
Love that. Love that book, by the way. That book comes up, coming up more and more often. It's a simple read, but it's funny, like who you think is the millionaire next door. And it's maybe not the guy with the flashy suit. It's the guy that's barely making it, that probably is the most well-dressed. Back in my Wall Street days, I feel you'd make 100,000 and people would spend 200,000 just to keep up with the wardrobe and going out and the fancy cars and things like that. So yeah, you'll be shocked. And then when you do meet the successful people, ask them what the journey looked like. Everyone likes to be the successful business owner. They want to be back to soccer, Ronaldo, Messi, hear all these names, but they don't know what that journey looked like. It was never, maybe not going out on the weekends. It was training at 4 a.m. and training 7-8 hours a day straight. So it's finding out what it takes to get there, because it may not be a fit for you. You may not want to put in certain efforts with the startup, but with the franchise, I'm not saying it's easier, but this model is set up and you can hit the ground running quicker. So you pick and choose and say, okay, this is what I want. This, I don't want to recreate the wheel. Then a franchise may be a good fit. In some cases, go the startup route, but you have options. And that's the best part. There's never been a time where there's never a lack of information. There's never a lack of options. People say, is brick and mortar better than a home service brand? I go, they're two different businesses, but how about this? Let's see if you qualify financially, because a brick and mortar is going to have a higher liquidity, net worth requirements. It's, are you okay opening up in a year? Those simple questions. I don't have the funds, nor am I open to that. That's great. That removes half the universe of franchises. We can focus on the relevant ones that fit your needs and what you're comfortable with. So that's how I tell people to look at it. I have this hot brand I just found last week. Great. You like the widget. What do they do? Your role in the business, yada, yada, yada. You have to be full-time. You express to me that you have to keep your job that first year, and that's the only requirement. That brand won't work simply because of that full-time engagement requirement. Can we shift, and is there a way for you to leave your job? So those are the little tweaks, and that you want to make sure the fit is there, and that franchise has that ideal that we have to make sure fits. Just like Floor Coverings International, the other brands, there is that person that does well. It's got to kind of match. If you're not going to do the sales and put in the efforts, certain brands aren't going to work, just simply because that's who that the town is, that ideal franchisees.
And Giuseppe, one thing to add to that for your viewers too, don't be afraid to use AI. Use AI on a daily basis just to help search the massive engine that is the internet. Basically, to your point about people that want to fit into different things, you can take whatever company is, whatever franchise, plug in, hey, please take articles and survey people and customer feedback of past franchisees and tell me what type of lifestyle they had, earning potential. You can do that kind of stuff on AI. I can't do it. I can't make any earnings claims, but do all the research on your own. Think about the time-life balance that fits in your role and take it from there. But validation is probably the key to everything. Franchisee validation. So speaking to franchise.
Awesome, Brandon. I really appreciate this. This was fun. We've known each other a while. I wish we had this conversation sooner, and looking forward to having you back on the show. If there's anything we didn't discuss, I'm sure we could have gone for 2 hours here. We can always either bring you back on. If there's maybe that quote, we're going to put all that in the show notes. But if there's anything else that we forgot to talk about, we can throw that into the blog and show notes for the listeners. And anything you guys need, if you want to explore Floor Coverings International, figure out what the ideal fit is, just let us know. Just spawn in the comments. You can book a call on franchiseguide.com. We could definitely sit down, figure out if franchise ownership is the right fit, bring up great, fantastic things like FCI, Floor Coverings International, amongst other brands, and we'd love to help you out, figure out funding, figure out and answer all those questions and see if the fits and the timing is more than glad to help you. So thanks again for coming on the show. This is awesome, and we'll definitely talk soon.
Thanks, Giuseppe. Appreciate it.
Thanks again.
Thanks for tuning in. If you want to learn how to make the transition from corporate to owning your franchise, join Giuseppe on the next episode. You can also follow on all social media platforms and achieve financial and time freedom today.